Hello, and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today, I'll be showing you how to cycle from Waterloo Station, south of the river, to Chelsea in west central London. This ride takes under 20 minutes, and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, the same journey would usually take a little longer and would also require a change of tube lines, so it makes a lot of sense to cycle this route. If you find this video useful, or you just enjoy watching it, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute as well, you can find a link in the description. Okay, let's get going. So we're starting on the Cab Road exit to Waterloo Station, and we're going to head down this shared pedestrian and cycle path. Obviously there are people walking here, so do be careful as you go down and give everyone a wide berth. Make sure you stop for this zebra crossing across the path as well. Given the number of people walking and cycling here, it would make a lot of sense to separate the cycle and pedestrian paths, but for now we have to do with a shared one as well as a shared toucan crossing which we just went over. The railway bridge above us, by the way, is the South East Main Line running between Waterloo East and Charing Cross. We're then dropped onto Concert Hall Approach, which notably lacks any give-way lines at its junction with Belvedere Road here, so as you negotiate that, be really careful as it isn't clear which road has the right of way and don't expect cars to stop. There's a really interesting piece of history below Belvedere Road. In 1910, whilst building County Hall, builders found the remains of an old Roman boat beneath this street. What was it doing here? Well, this used to be where the foreshore of the River Thames came up to. I'm really not a fan of the way this is laid out, by the way. You can see here it creates a bit of a bottleneck and people have to queue to get through those planters. It would be better to use a standard line of bollards, although I think this street is privately managed, which really explains some of the weird design choices. It is nice and quiet though, as it is closed at both ends to general traffic. Unfortunately, this bit could also do with a bit of improving. You can see from the shared space sign on that bollard that you are allowed to cycle here, and it leads us onto a toucan crossing which you can cycle across too, but considering how busy the pedestrian crossing is and how popular the segregated cycle lanes on the main road are, I think it's fair to say that the entrance to Belvedere Road really needs a redesign. These protected cycle lanes over Westminster Bridge are quite new and really welcome, although beware people, particularly tourists looking at Big Ben, standing in the path, including if you look on your right someone having a wedding photo taken. The problem isn't so bad in this direction, but on the other side of the road it's pretty much constant in the afternoon and it can be very difficult to get down the lane. Overall, I would say that link from Waterloo to Westminster, while being safe and basically fine, is a lot more frustrating than it needs to be, and with a few of those small changes I flagged, like the entrance to Belvedere Road or adding some give-way lines on Concert Hall Approach, it could actually be quite a decent little cycle route. For the next section of the video, we're going to be going down Cycleway 3, which is a really high quality protected cycle route, really across the centre of Westminster, and it leads through the parks and Hyde Park. And then for the sort of third act, I'll show you what I think the best route from Cycleway 3 down to the east end of Chelsea around Sloane Square or the King's Road is. The Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea isn't known for its particularly brilliant cycle infrastructure. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's probably the worst central London borough for cycling. But I think I've found a pretty useful link, so I'm interested to know what you guys think, and let me know in the comments below when you're done watching. But for now we're on the excellent Cycleway 3, which really provides a great protected spine east-west through central London. It passes a lot of notable sites, so on the left there is the Wellington Barracks, which is the barracks for the Foot Guards Regiment. It's deliberately located close to Buckingham Palace, which you can see just through the trees there on your right, so that the guards can reach the palace quickly in the event of an emergency. Buckingham Palace itself is now becoming clearer as we round the corner. It's on the left there, and dead in front of us you can see a golden statue on a plinth, and if you ever wondered what that is, it's actually a memorial to Queen Victoria. A bit of trivia, if you watch the 2020 Benedict Cumberbatch film The Courier, you'll see a shot outside Buckingham Palace, and if you look closely you'll see these black and white protective wands outside the palace. That is, of course, an anachronism as the film is set in the 1960s and the protected cycle lane only went in 2016. C3 now continues up Constitution Hill, which has a really pleasant and wide cycle path down it. Do make sure that you pick the correct side of the barrier when you join the hill, however. It's cycles on the left here and pedestrians on the right, and if you take a look at that fence, there actually isn't a break in the fence the whole way up the hill. It's actually really difficult to get from this side of the fence to the other side of the fence, which is why you'll sometimes see pedestrians who've picked the wrong side at the top or bottom of the hill continuing to walk up the cycle path. It's really quite a silly design, and it should be a lot easier to get from one side to the other. I suspect the reason for the continuous bar is probably to do with security and making the palace defensible from things like protests. On the other hand, it could just be bad design, and there is a lot of that on the Crown Estate. We're now going to ride under this massive monumental arch, which is sometimes confused for Marble Arch, but it's not, it's the Wellington Arch. Marble Arch is actually on the other side of Hyde Park at the north end of Park Lane. It's really nice to see cargo bikes in central London, by the way. It used to be really rare to see them. Then around the pandemic they started appearing in places like Hackney, and now they're really just spreading everywhere all the time. I really hope that continues, as it means fewer cars and vans on the road. I have opinions, by the way, about this pedestrian crossing coming up here. It no longer makes sense for it to exist. You can see absolutely everybody is crossing on the red, and that's because if you look to the left of this cycle path here, you'll see that there is zero traffic on the main road. This is the South Carriage Drive. The reason for that is that the South Carriage Drive is now closed to drivers. It's not a through route anymore, and so traffic levels are extremely low, and I think it would make a lot of sense to convert that signalled crossing back there by the entrance to the park into a zebra crossing with a cycle zebra as well. You could also do more or less the same here, where we're actually going to turn off left. Make sure you indicate so people expect you to turn, and do double check that there are no cars on the street, as they do occasionally drop by. Note that the green light here actually says left turn only, but there is a fourth light beneath that light which is currently covered in a bin bag. I suspect that's going to be a straight ahead cycles light, but it just hasn't been switched on yet. I think the reason that that light is a strange configuration is because that's actually quite an old London Cycle Network crossing from back in the 80s or 90s, and back in those days they just didn't really think about bikes even when they were actually building something for them. Loudness Square, which we're in now, is surprisingly decent and quiet for cycling, although it could be improved by adding two-way cycling on the arm we just went down. Currently, if you do that route in the opposite direction, you do have to go around the square like a little gyratory, as it is just one way. That street is actually in the city of Westminster by one street. In fact, we've actually just crossed into Kensington and Chelsea about now. And Westminster, coincidentally, are looking at adding in more contraflows to their streets and two-way cycling. So hopefully that's one that they will add in, because I think it's a really useful link when you take into account that connection into Hyde Park. We're now picking our way down some of the quieter squares of this area. I think this is one of those times on this channel where I say that this isn't necessarily a great cycle route, it's just probably the best way to get through this area, given a pretty limited set of options. You can see that it's reasonably quiet, and to be fair, this was actually shot at the later end of rush hour, so it's probably about as busy as it gets around here. I have been here on a weekend as well, and actually I remember it being pretty good. There were some roadworks when I came down to film this, and usually this street would actually be open to traffic. I don't think it's really affected the level of traffic on the route very much though. We quickly turn off left here into Pavilion Road, and this actually quickly turns into something quite surprising for Kensington and Chelsea, and that is a really nice pedestrianised street which crucially you're actually allowed to cycle down. If all of this part of town was like this, I think I'd probably like it quite a lot more. It's really a bit of a gem actually, and quite nice, if pricey. We then, at the end of this street, pull out onto the end of Sloane Square, which is at the eastern end of the King's Road in Chelsea. And that's the route. So, thanks very much for watching that, guys. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit subscribe, as I try to post new routes every week. And if you really like what we're doing on the channel, you could always consider contributing to the Patreon. Thanks so much to everyone who already does that. I'm really interested to know what you think, especially about that last bit through Kensington and Chelsea, so let me know in the comments below, and I will see you again next time.